So let's take an inside look at the controls for the DSM-2C 2.4 gig radio. We just open up our panel. Okay, we have several knobs and switches and lights. See what they are. From the top left here, okay, we have, this is the steering reverse switch. This is the throttle reverse. Okay, there are two LEDs that come on when we turn the radio on. We have a bind button. Then we have these three. These are the main controls that you need to worry about are the ones down at the bottom. These are the, from left to right, again, we have the steering trim, we have the throttle trim, and we have the steering dual rate, as well as, of course, the on-off switch. What do these things do? Well, what the steering trim does is when you adjust your wheel, turn your wheel right or left, that controls whether the wheels in the car go to the left or to the right. And what the steering trim does, this adjusts whether the wheels are straight ahead or to the left or to the right when the steering wheel is at its neutral position. So you want to set this so that the wheels are straight ahead when you're not turning the car. Throttle trim, this one's really important. If the throttle trim, it needs to be set near its neutral position. And in this case, with the DSM-2C radio, there's a little triangle that's marked on the inside of this panel. You want to keep it close to that position to start out. If the throttle trim is too far forward or reverse, then if you turn the car on, the car will tend to be moving forward or moving in reverse even when you're not pulling the trigger. So you want to set that so that the car is not moving when the trigger is not being pulled. And you also want to set it so that the car can respond forward and the car can respond in reverse. It turns out this one, certainly with some of the Redcat trucks, this is a sensitive switch. So it's possible to have this set so that the car is kind of stationary when the trigger is not being pulled, but it will appear that the car can only move forward or only move in reverse. So usually in that case, if you just make small adjustments to the throttle trim, then you can fix that. So you want to set this, of course, so that the car, it's stationary when you turn everything on, but it will respond to the trigger to move both forwards and in reverse. And then we have the steering dual rates. This controls the amount of steering response that you'll get. If you turn the steering dual rate all the way down, then no matter how far you turn the wheel, left or right, you won't see any steering response to the car. So you can kind of turn down the steering response perhaps when you're starting out trying to drive it a little faster, and then you can turn it all the way up when you want full response. So this is one of the things, if your car appears to not respond to the steering, this is the first thing you want to check, is to make sure that the steering dual rate control is not just shut all the way down. Because if it's turned all the way down, you won't get any response. That's not a defect, it's adjustable through the radio. So you want to be sure to open the switch out, then make sure the car will respond. Now we have the two switches up at the top, which were our steering reverse and our throttle reverse. So what you do with the steering reverse is, usually you want, when you turn the wheel to the right, you want the car tires to turn to the right. But if you want to change it the other way, or for some reason the car arrives where it's, when you turn the wheel to the right, for some reason it's going to the left, you just flip the switch to the other side. So that reverses the steering control. And similarly for the throttle, usually, almost everybody, you want the car to move forward when you pull the trigger in. And once you brake and then push the trigger out, you want the car to move in reverse. So if the orientation is reversed, then you just flip the throttle reverse switch, and that'll fix it for you. So again, all these things are controllable through the radio. So of course, you have your on-off switch, and then once you've got the controls set up, all you really need to do once you open up the panel is just to turn the radio on. So of course, when you turn it on, the lights come on. There we go. You wouldn't need the bind switch either with a new vehicle. New vehicle that's sold ready to run, the radio is already bound to the receiver. That if you get a different receiver and you need to bind it to the radio, that's when you would use the bind button. But you don't need that for now. So once you first get your car and you want to get it set up, you need to make sure that the throttle trim is set close to neutral before you turn everything on. Then you can deal with the steering trim and just make sure that the steering dual rate control is opened out so that you'll be able to steer the car if there's, assuming the servo works, which it should. Occasionally servos can fail, but again, if you find it after a time, maybe after a few days or after a few uses, that the car doesn't respond to steering, just make sure that somebody hasn't turned the switch all the way down. Okay. So then we turn on. Ready to go. So again, once you have these controls initially set up, then you really shouldn't need to mess with them. And the only thing you should really need to do to run the car is to turn the switch, turn the on or off switch. Okay. Close that down.